Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast. We have an amazing guest on. She's also known as the Mind Whisperer. So if you don't know her by that name, now you do. Her name is Dawna Campbell. I want to introduce her, give her some time to talk through her background, and then we'll have a deep conversation into her interests and what she's doing in the future.
Well, thank you for so much for having me here on your show.
So let's start off with your career. I know you've written a book. Let's talk through your book.
Okay, perfect. I have several books actually. One of my passions is writing. The very first book I ever wrote was called Financially Fit: Living the Secrets to an Abundant and Prosperous Life, which was more of a just a self-help book. I didn't love how it turned out. Like most people who write a book, they don't love their first book, I discovered. So I decided to take a completely different approach. And so I wrote a book called The Abundant Soul. And what I did was I took the principles from Financially Fit and wrote it into a story format, applying the different principles so it is relatable to everybody. And so, what I talk a lot about is creating inner wisdom for financial success. And so, how you think and feel about yourself is how money responds to you in life. And so, it's this inner approach to everything in the outside world that gets created. And that's what this novel does through The Abundant Soul.
So your approach is finances and so let me give you a background, quick little story. There was a gentleman, he played football for many years. His name was Deion Sanders. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's pretty famous. And one
Yeah.
of the things he talked through was you look good. Hold on, he said it in a saying: if you feel good, you look good. If you look good, you get paid good. And he had this saying, and basically his whole concept was the way you look, the way you got paid, and then that, he's obviously on a bigger scale. But if you can dive into that and how that actually impacts how someone's feeling.
Yeah, it's a two-way street and it's very much a symbiotic relationship because if you don't look good, you're not going to feel good. You're not going to perform well. But at the same time, you also have to be a master of your own craft because we all have gifts, talents, and abilities. And if you focus on them and practice, like Deion Sanders, practiced a lot, but he didn't go side focus on, let me go down all these other bunny trails. I'm just going to stick with this one thing I'm really good at. So, with that, and when you couple it to the things on the outside, yes, things happen in your life, but you still have to come into a vibrational alignment with who you are. So you have to be authentic, you have to be grounded, you have to believe what you say. So he firmly believed those statements. So, of course, it worked for him. Oftentimes in the financial world, I have a background in finance and had been a financial advisor and a managing principal for an investment firm for over 10 years. And after that time, clients weren't necessarily any better off than they were than they started. But some of the things that happened, I noticed that people would walk around and say, I'm rich and abundant, which would have been about 10% of our conscious reality. But on the deep inside, they would feel a lack less than who am I type of energy. And so that created a disparity within a person. And then, so what I do with people is we release or we reprogram those emotional aspects. So when you say, I'm rich and abundant, then you feel rich and abundant on the inside. Therefore, you are rich and abundant. For Deion Sanders, he would say, if you look good, you feel good, you're going to perform better. He believed that wholeheartedly inside of him. So, of course, that worked for him. So, if somebody said that, but they didn't believe that they looked good or they felt good, they weren't going to perform. Those things wouldn't come to them. So everything we have is from that inside out perspective.
That makes a lot of sense. And that leads me to ask you this question: is how important is setting the expectations up front that are realistic and not setting yourself up for failure?
Incredibly important, because if you sit down before anything that you do and have an intention set, then that's already like a pre-program that's in there. So when you sit down to do the activity or you go to that event or you go do it naturally gravitates because you're putting out that energy to attract back to you. And then events or things align with the people that you are meant to meet versus the people maybe you're not meant to meet. So when I wrote The Abundant Soul, I did about 2 months of prep work before I even started writing, putting out the intention with what I wanted people to receive when they read the book. And it did that and even more because they're writing reviews about it and how things are synchronistically aligning in their life. And all they did was read the book. And they're like, I don't know how you did this. Well, I put the intention in the book so people can have healing if they read the book for whatever they needed.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Do you have some transformation stories or some cases that you've noticed that work best?
Yes, actually, a lot of them. So the work that I do, it works on a physical, a mental, an emotional, financial, spiritual, pick a level, it works. Because what I do is go through a process with the client to uncover what the root feeling or emotion is. Because they always say our thoughts create our reality. What you believe is what's creating. Well, that's great. You can change a belief all day long from like I'm unwanted to I'm wanted. But if you don't change the fuel that we put in there, the emotion or the feeling, it's not going to shift or change. So, what does feeling unwanted really feel like? And when we change that to a higher emotion and feeling, all the beliefs associated with that then shifts and changes as well. So, on a physical level, I have had clients come to me who have had cancer, who have had diabetes, who have had various ailments, digestive issues, Crohn's disease, IBS, you name it. The process is the same. Each of the body systems resonates to core emotions. So, say, for example, cancer, it resonates a lot with resentment. Well, we can go back, find where that resentment originally started, and when we change the emotional frequency, cancer resonates at resentment here. But if we bring you up here and you're now in happiness, for example, it doesn't have anything to connect to. So that cancer has to leave the body. So, yes, I do have clients that are still cancer free. 8 years later, still doctor verified. They just scratch their head. We don't know what you did, but keep doing whatever it is you're doing. You're still cancer free. Same thing with all the other health conditions, emotional issues, relationships, financial situations. A lot of times I say it's a 25% increase or more. Most of my clients, if you work with me over a year or 2 years, your income increases somewhere right around that 45-50% mark. Why? The universe is all. So if I'm working on one issue over here, maybe it's a relationship, it changes everything vibrationally in your field. And then it'll affect your health, it'll affect your finances, it'll affect everything with it, even though we're only looking at one aspect.
No, these are all such good topics, and I'm thinking through as you're telling me this. I'm thinking through and processing it. And I like to tell stories, and I'll give you an example of how something like this maybe can align with what you're saying.
Hmm.
A lot of times when I'm driving to work, I do self reflection, and I think about the day or I think about what happened. One thing I learned is the easiest way to have a bad day is to either be late or have a bad time driving. But one
Hmm.
day I was heading out to work, and I have a little daughter. She's 5 years old. And I think I looked down to her and said, "Today's going to be a great day." And I said it a couple times to her. And then I got in the car and drove off. And the whole day was really a much better day than what was normal. And so that self talk kind of
Yes, yes.
projected the future of that day. So I don't know if that aligns, but that's a story that's you're kind of hidden on that. And it's making me think through that.
Yes, absolutely. I do the same thing. Yesterday morning, I got up, I made my coffee, I looked at my coffee cups. I have some from different countries, and I pulled one out that's bright yellow from Costa Rica. I went, this is such a fun cup. Today is going to be a fun day. I'm just going to use this cup. And I had a blast yesterday. So, yes, all of those little things, that self talk, because you're setting the intention and you're telling yourself, you're telling the energy, you're telling the environment exactly how you want to live it.
Yeah, no. And so are there any tips that you have that would be a good use case? I know I've read a lot of books, and I think one of the books I read was David Goggins' motivational one where he talked through his story, and one of the things he did was he actually labeled his mirrors in his house and
Mhm.
put notes up. And most people understand that, but are there other tips that you work through and you have that could be useful?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the ones that I think about, it's something that I do teach in the coursework, but is you have to create awareness because often we are walking around and we just don't know how we feel. We don't check in with ourselves. We have no idea. So I tell people often to set a timer on their phone and have it go off at, say, 3 hours and 27 minutes from the moment that you're in now. So it doesn't hit the top of the hour or the half hour at some random time. And when that timer goes off, stop whatever it is that you're doing and ask yourself, how do I feel in this moment? And you might be surprised. You might be happy and joyful, and that's great. Or you might feel a little bit of stress and some frustration because, like last night, my printers weren't working. And you're like, why isn't this working? So when you recognize that there's frustration or something that you don't want to experience, you're going to do this quick exercise. When we breathe in oxygen, all of the things that our body needs, all of the good stuff. And when we breathe out carbon dioxide, all the toxins, things we don't need. So when you breathe in, you're going to think the word that you want: peace, happiness. And when you breathe out the words you don't want: stress, frustration. And do that for a good 3, 4, 5 minutes. If you can make it to 7 minutes, that's really good. But you're going to create a physiological change in the body. And you are overriding that frustration feeling, the stress feeling, with the peace and the happiness. And then the rest of your day will flow in a natural state that you didn't have before. You're going to have more focus, you're going to have more clarity, you're going to have more balance, and things just effortlessly unfold. And then reset that timer for a different obscure time. But if you notice anytime, if you're just driving down the road and somebody cuts you off and you have that moment, do that same thing with the breath because it works. It's also altering your brainwave patterns, but that's a whole different topic.
Yeah, I was to say that I was taking a MBA class, and in the class every day I would go crazy because the teacher or the professor, excuse me, the professor would start off and say, we're taking 5 minutes and everyone's going to close their eyes, and they put on music and we close our eyes, and it was she was kind of trying to show us, when you start maybe a meeting at your corporate job, some people may be frustrated before they sit down, and that could have a bias into the meeting. And there's these different factors. So if you can create a relaxed type of setting, a baseline for the people. And then I was going to mention that she also mentioned this is the time, if you do this for a longer period of time during meditation, you can reform your brain patterns to what you were saying.
Yes.
And so that's such a good topic that you were talking through. So
Yes, absolutely. You can. And you can do and reformat those brain patterns. And a lot of times with the work that I do, because of how physics works, we can go in, share in an energy field in a space, and ask for the transformation. And it happens really fast through the breath work. The client doesn't have to do anything. I immediately go into different brainwave pattern and we witness that transformation within you. And what's important about that is it doesn't have to take a long time. Meditation doesn't have to sit around for 3 hours going, oh, it's an alteration of your brainwave patterns when you meditate. So if you know how to do that on a rapid, quick basis, you can live in that state of meditation and still be talking and doing all the other things and experiencing the good things in life. And I can't hear you at the moment.
I did it on purpose so that it could, no, I'm joking. So one of the things I wanted to,
It was a test.
so one of the things we learned about during that same MBA program was your environment really affects your personality more than any other category. And so, your environment having that effect, how can someone mitigate those stressors from the environment and kind of, I know you gave a tip where you would set your timer, but being self-aware is another tip. And as I'm thinking through this question, it's answering it itself, and you've already answered it. But are there any other tips that you could provide?
Yeah. Let me share with you this quick little story since you like stories. Our environments really do have a huge impacts on us. And it's not just living in the environment, but it's also what you do with living in the environment. There's so many different studies about twins who grew up in the same family. One became a successful multimillionaire and the other one's like in jail, but yet they had the same abusive father. Why is that? Well, when I was growing up, I remember my mother asking me, I was about 8 or 9 at the time, and she said, Dawna, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I remember looking at her and I said, well, that's a great question. I never really thought about it as a kid, right? And I'm like, I think I'm going to join Greenpeace and save the whales. And I was really excited about that. And I really felt it in my body. And the things I didn't realize, my mom, it was part of the women's liberation movement. Women could be anything at that time. It was better to say something like a doctor or a scientist. And that's exactly what she told me back. And she said that to me. And she said, Dawna, no, you can be any of this. And she got incredibly angry. And then she opened up the door, stormed out, and slammed it in my face. And I went, wow, I didn't answer correctly. And I could feel that. It was like walking on eggshells. And I remember going outside in and this is one of those tips. You can pivot and shift the energy. You don't have to stay in the same room. You can change the environment, like leaving the room or going outside. So I went outside and I thought about that for a few minutes and I'm like, no, I really want to, do something good in this world. I I don't want to be a doctor. I don't, be a lawyer. So I remember thinking through skipping down the street and going, oh, look, shiny rock, pick it up, stick it into my pocket. The next time my mom asked me that question, I'm telling you, I'm going to tell her, I told her the answers that she wanted to hear. Oh, I could be a veterinarian, or I could be a teacher, or I could be this, or I could be that. And it got me out of that situation. But what was really funny is that part of that environment is I do work on animals. I do teach, just not in the classic traditional ways most people think. So your environment does have that huge impact. But if you're in an environment or a situation physically where it is not safe, move. Because every time you move your physical body, the energy in the room, the atmosphere, the air around you moves and changes, and the other person can dissipate or escalate if it was a joyful occasion.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you I think I have a different question that's going to kind of spin this a different way. Are you more of a destiny type of person and a fate type of person, or do you think the person holds their own destiny?
I think it's inside of you and that it finds you. I don't know that we find it because I will tell you, at age 8, I didn't say, oh, look, I think I will say that I'm a healer or get called a mind whisperer. Those things weren't in my repertoire or anything. And it was furthest from what I would have thought that I would be doing in my lifetime. But because of all of my life events and the different things that have happened, everything aligned and that purpose found me based on my gifts, talents, and abilities. So with destiny or with fate, I think it finds you. I think there's alignment. I think there's synchronistic events, which some people can call fate, or some people say it was destiny that we met. Is it, the destination, the end where you get, or is it the journey on the way there? It's kind of both because once you get to the end, it's never the end. It's just the beginning of something new.
And so I know you I know you mentioned your book focuses, and I believe you are the CEO of the Healing Heart. And I know
Yes.
that focuses around financial advising. And could you talk to the impacts that finances have on people and their ability to uh, transition throughout their life?
Yep, absolutely. I'm a former financial advisor and a managing principal, so I don't advise people anymore on what to do with their money, where to invest. I'm no longer licensed to do that. What I do, though, is bring the subconscious awareness and align so that their finances will bring in more money. So, money is emotional. By itself, it's an outside energy form to you. So, without you, money's not going to do anything. It needs you because otherwise it's just going to sit there until someone picks it up and puts it into circulation. And you are also an energy body. And so how you think and feel about yourself is how money responds to you in life because it's a symbiotic relationship. So in the financial planning world, we would say things like, here is your net worth. Your portfolio value is, your assets appreciated. Oh, do you have enough money to fund XYZ goal? And if you didn't feel like you were enough on the inside, chances are you didn't have enough on the outside. Well, working a lot with clients over the last 20 years, when we get down to the heart of the issues, people are like, I just wanted to know that I was worthy or that someone valued me and appreciated me because I was treated like this. And it's that same relationship. If you didn't feel appreciated, your money might not appreciate in the accounts. If you don't feel valued, you might have a low value of money or your net worth might not be very high. So as I was noticing, as we were making changes within the client and they felt worthy and appreciated and valued and saw things from a different context, their money always increased and we didn't change anything. So a client of mine works for a nonprofit. You never get a raise really in nonprofit work. And we did a session. We went back to something in childhood, changed what it was for her to receive that. And the next thing she knows, she's like, a week later, she's like, I just got a 33% raise. We don't get raises in nonprofits. What just happened? And she's been with me ever since. So, and that's how we keep track of the numbers with what people increase. And we might work on a relationship thing or something different, but it always increases on the money side as well.
Yeah, what you're saying is making a lot of sense. And in my mind, like I say, as you're speaking and you're telling me these things, I'm thinking through it in a elementary way. In my mind, I start thinking through how it would apply to me. And I'll just give you a scenario of how I could see that happening is, you know, you put yourself in a happier place or in a more spiritually aligned place where you're making better decisions because the priorities are based off of those. Whereas when I was younger, I may have put myself in a more risky or more um, not a higher priority, which would then
Mhm.
cause me to make bad decisions on going to do an impulse buy, which should have been money I was saving. So that I can see how that reflecting on my life, how that could impact someone's trajectory in their finances. What about the so I do another podcast where I interview AI on different topics. And one of the more recent ones that I did, I learned about universal basic income. Is there any type
Mhm.
of research or understanding of just having your basic needs met and not having that as a stressor and impact to the person's happiness or um into their happiness?
That's a very, very interesting question. And again, it goes back to your own perception based on your own experiences. One of the people that I had worked with in the past was Native American. And in the beginning, he didn't have a whole lot. And so we had to think we had to suffer, we had to sacrifice. You had to go and do these things to have food on the table. And then over time, he actually came into quite a bit of money and thought, great, all of this, it's here. I can live in this big house. I can have this. I can do that. I don't have to worry about that over there. But what he realized for him was having that larger amount of money was a different type of stress for him. And it did different things to him, and he did not like it or enjoy it. So he actually literally gave everything up and went back to his natural way of life and keeping it simple and going through the forest and getting berries. Yes, they still do that. I live in Montana, trust me. And living more off the land because nature is abundant. So his definition of abundance and prosperity changed over the course. And he said, I live a richer, fulfiller life living like this than I did like how the world said. That's one example there. So yes, you can be very happy and just have your needs met, but that's not what we're taught culturally in our country. And then it creates the stress and the disharmony, and then that breaks down the physical body. And we're always searching, but we're always searching outside of ourselves. But the answer's already inside of you.
Yeah, no, what you're saying makes so much sense. And I'm thinking through how to apply this, right? And the same question that, and I've already done this with my daughter, is what do you want to be when you grow up? And then
Mm,
says something, and I'm like, no, a doctor, and no this or no that. And so now it's making me think like a better way could be, well, let's define what success is and have
mhm,
you define what you think success is. Because like, I would start thinking through some of the podcasts I watch. And there's one about some homeless people where they interview the homeless people, and many of them choose to be homeless, many don't. But the ones that choose to be homeless, they're happy doing that. And maybe they think they're happy or they are happy. And so
mm,
what culturally defines success as versus what you define success as could be transcending in your whole life.
mhm. Absolutely, because your success might be somebody else's failure, and somebody else's failure might be your success. So it's based on the perception that you have. And what does that quote unquote failure do for someone? And if you were Thomas Edison, you would keep working until you brought in the light bulb because you knew it was possible and you held on to that. But somebody else might have given up on try three.
Yeah, and that's a good.
It's,
I'll give you an example for myself. When I was younger, success was going to the NFL. And as we were in high school, they started saying the numbers, and then you're like, oh well, I guess that's probably not attainable because it's like 1% of anyone is going to make it to the NFL. So then, but what they did a horrible job of doing was saying, well, I could have shifted and saying my success could have been working in the sports industry. And, it didn't have to be the NFL. And so you can modify that. And I think that also impacts someone's future goals and could impact
mhm.
life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it always comes back down to what you think and feel and believe about yourself. Is it possible? Yes, all things are possible, but we are so conditioned from our outside world, it makes us to believe that it's not possible. So the NFL, yes, it could be possible. There is probability there. Is it less probability than something else? Maybe, but it's still possible because there's still opportunity.
And so I want to shift towards a more male dominated type of question and maybe
Mm,
ask you if there's a man listening to this that's more of an alpha type of man who's probably going to be resistant to start talking about their feelings and how their emotions are. You know how the guy,
yeah.
what would your response to that be, and how could we navigate that? Because really, I think this would be really beneficial. But if they're resistant to it, it's going to be hard to integrate.
So there's a difference between working with men and working with women. I have both in my client base, and most of my private clients are actually men. So when we think about from a man's point of view, sitting around and talking about our feelings, we think, oh, there's a group of women, or maybe it's one on one, and we're sitting around and we're gossiping and telling all the details and getting all ooey gooey, and not that way. And so the men that come that want to shift and change, ironically, they take what would take a woman an hour to process and to work on, takes a man 30 minutes. And it goes something like this. So, what would you like to have better? I want more money. You get these one line sentences. Perfect. How would it feel if you had more money? Well, it'd feel great. Well, what does feeling great feel like? And we discover that. And then, all right, how does it feel not having that today? Oh, that's pretty crappy. Well, what does pretty crappy feel like? Well, I kind of get angry because I work a lot on it. Okay, well, now we have our emotions angry and something pretty fantastic. And so it goes much, much faster. They don't sit and dwell in the details of here's all the details of the story, which I don't need. I only need the emotion coming out. And if they can identify an emotion and just say the word, that's all that's needed. So it's not a long dragged out therapy session. Trust me, I don't want to know all the details of everybody's life.
Yeah, and as, someone who walks around the house and says, "I have no feelings," uh, clearly knowing I do. So, I before explaining it in that way, I would have said, "Oh, well, you start talking through feelings. I'm out of here. I don't have feelings. I don't want to talk about them."
Yeah,
I shut down.
right. Well, and we were taught to do that. And what's funny is that a lot of times people are like, "Yeah, I'm okay." Well, no, that's not a feeling. Okay, I'm good. Well, what does good feel like? Because it feels different to me. So obviously it's different for you. Or sometimes I get, I'm stuck. Well, what feeling is stuck? And you just have to name it. And that's the first step. You don't have to sit in it. You have to dwell in it. You don't have to experience it. You just have to name it. And that's the beauty of this work.
And so could you explain subconscious reprogramming? Is that what we're talking through? Um,
Yeah.
this is the first time I'm hearing of it, and so as you're talking through, I'm wondering, is that what we're talking through right now?
Yeah. Absolutely. Because our awareness, we're only 10% on a good day aware of anything around us. And that's if you're Albert Einstein. They measured his brain, he had 10% awareness. The other 90% is in the subconscious, all the things that we're not necessarily aware of. You're not 90, every second of every day, you're not conscious that your heart is beating, that you're breathing, that your cells are reproducing, but yet we know it's happening. But we don't have the conscious awareness that it's happening 24/7 because we're experiencing what we call life. For example, and so what we do is we go from the consciousness, we understand what a certain feeling is. We can say and ask, well, where do you feel that in the body? And it goes back to the subconscious, to an early childhood memory most often. And then when we recall that memory, we can identify a different feeling or emotion. And then once we do, when we reprogram that, say from frustration to happiness, then you will see that childhood situation from a different point of view or a different perspective you've never seen before. And then there's a chemical flush that happens in the body, a physiological change. And then you operate from that higher vibrational imprint. So we consciously brought up a subconscious memory that's there, it's always there. We made it into the conscious awareness. We changed it and put it back. And then the next thing you know, you are attracting into you the things that you're asking for, because that 90% has a magnetic attraction. It's 100% actually, but we're only aware of it 10% of the time. So we're looking for all of the undercurrents or all of the pieces or the blocks or the things that are stopping us that we're not always aware of, but we're still sending out those signals. So you could think that you are in a good mood and you're going to fake it until you make it. And yet you walk up and you meet a group of friends and they look at you and one of them goes, "Man, why you feel kind of off today? Why do you feel so angry?" And you're standing there going, "I thought I was feeling pretty darn good." And it's because they're seeing and feeling and experiencing that subconscious energy.
Right now I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about my iPhone and the little emoji with the exploded head. Because because what I'm saying is like, I'm taking what I've learned in my schooling from my MBA and what they're talking through about how that one class where they talked through the emotions, and most of the time I just was like, emotions, feelings, we're talking about this again. And now when you say it in that way, and she said many of the same things you're saying, but maybe not in this way where you can enter an environment where knowing yourself to the point of, because I think knowing yourself, when you say know yourself, I know myself in the moment, but I don't realize what you're saying of knowing yourself to understand some of the maybe things you don't think of as trauma.
Right. Exactly. Exactly there.
Yeah, knowing some of those things that are trauma. And then when you enter an environment that could bring that up subconsciously, and your lizard brain sends you to defense mode and you don't even know
Yep.
you're in it. And so being aware of that could, and so like that's why I'm saying I'm the emoji head right now.
Yes, you're absolutely right. You can walk into an environment, something happens, you have a trigger, you react or respond in a certain way, and you have no idea why you did it.
And
It's in the subconscious. It was programmed from before.
that's so fascinating right now. You got me thinking so much. One thing that I did want to see if you had any insights on is how does someone's fitness or diet affect any of this? Because I know it can control some of their hormones, and I don't know if it has that big of an impact on it.
Absolutely. And that is probably one of my favorite questions as well. Um, the higher vibrating foods you eat, like living food, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, those types of foods are going to increase your vibration because they have the highest nutritional value. If you eat a lot of processed food, then what's going to happen is that's not living food. There could be some benefit to it, but it's going to keep your energy field down or condensed or keep you more in those other states. But your emotional feelings have a bigger impact. And so there was a time in my life where I had discovered my husband was unfaithful to me. So I left the marriage as a single mom, two kids. And the year and a half, 2 years, well, 2 years before that, I had been going to the gym, working out, counting calories, eating right, keeping food logs, had a personal trainer because I was trying to release the excess weight off of my body from having my second child. And a year later, I weigh exactly the same. My body has not changed, and I'm knocking myself out, doing all the right things. Well, then I changed gyms, trainers, and diets. Went another 6 months. Still no result. The infidelity surfaced, the truth always surfaces to the top. He left. I sat down and realized I was pretty angry, and I've been pretty angry. I just didn't know why I was angry. And I thought I was doing better in that with that marriage because it was less angry than the household I grew up in. And after he left, I quit the gym, quit the food logs, quit eating anything. Really, and if I wanted a pan of brownies for dinner, I ate the pan of brownies. And in 4 months, 3 months, 4 months, I had 40 pounds fall off my body. And I remember walking into my office at the financial services firm, and my assistant looked at me and said, Dawna, you have to go buy new clothes. And I went, what do you mean? And she goes, look behind you. And we wore suits every day. So I had no idea. So I kind of look at my backside and realize I went from a size 12 to a size 6 in a few months. And the only thing I changed was my emotional state. So it's not just the food that you eat, it's how you feel while you're eating that food. And that's the emotion you're putting into your body. So you can eat the most healthiest meal ever and be angry and upset and not lose a pound. You can eat the wrong things and lose a lot of weight. Now, today I know better. It's been many, many different years. If I eat the wrong things necessarily for my body to what I want, I don't feel good inside anymore. So I stick to a diet of fruits and vegetables, nuts and meat, or nuts and seeds, and sometimes meat. I do have dairy occasionally. I do have wheat occasionally because everything in moderation, including moderation. You know, if I want an ice cream cone, I'll go get it. But it's not an everyday occurrence for me. It might be a once a month kind of thing. And then I just don't feel good. So then I don't do it anymore.
Yeah, a lot of what you're saying is it's making sense too, because when I hear of how impactful stress can be on your body, and
Mhm.
when one and now you're telling me 10%, and that's, maybe it's 12% for me because Albert Einstein, come on, really? No, I'm joking.
Right.
That, right, Albert Einstein. So it's probably less for me, significantly less, right? And so that stress could be manifested when you don't even know it's happening. So now you're making me think of that in the sense of someone enters a room, you're just talking and having a good time, and your body is stressed out, and you don't even
Mhm.
realize you're in a stressed state. And so,
Correct. And our words with all of that also have a huge impact. We often say we want to lose weight. Well, what happens if you lose something? Say you lost your keys or your phone. You search until you find it. Well, if we lose weight, we're going to find even more. And then so a lot of people will say, well, I'm going to release it. But if you just release the weight, you might still have an emotional connection to the weight and call it back. So I learned it through a native story. We want to relinquish it, relinquish weight, because if we fully relinquish the weight, then we have no emotional attachment to it. It can be gone permanently. But then recently, this was a mind twist for me. I was doing some studying and somebody said, no, all these women are walking around talking about losing weight and everything. Well, what kind of weight do you want to lose? Do you want to lose muscle mass? Nope. You want to lose fat. So it's better to say, I want to burn fat than to lose weight, because really that's what we mean. And that's what's more in alignment with our intention. And I went, he's absolutely right. I'm going to burn fat now. So that's my new verbiage. But our words and how we even talk to ourselves has such an incredible impact that way to what it means.
Yeah, that's such a good point. The one quick story I can tell you about that for myself, I was and I think this is going to lead to, again, maybe sitting down and having more of an intentional goal setting. Each person should probably do that and maybe define each word that they're using, because I was in the same boat. I was doing I think it was in 2018, I did some bodybuilding competitions, and I wanted to lose, I put the quotes, to lose weight. Really what I wanted to do was burn fat. And so what I did was I started a diet, I started a workout routine, and it worked. I was burning fat, but the weight wasn't coming off the scale. And for about
Right.
4.5 weeks, I was very frustrated. But then when I did my body composition at the with the it's called the bod pod, they like measure your body composition. I actually gained, I think I gained 1 pound of muscle. I gained 4 pounds of muscle and lost 3 pounds of fat. But my goal was never met, because my goal was to lose weight, which is my whole point to that was to say we need to sit down and have a more intentional goal setting
Mhm.
beginning.
Absolutely. And absolutely. And before you do anything, if you sit down and do that first and then go into the activity, whether it's a sports activity, writing a book, speaking on stage, doing a podcast, whatever that intention is, because you sat down and did the pre work, that's what comes back.
Now, I do want to ask you this question. This is a little bit of my ignorance. You mentioned when you were eating, the food had a vibration. Could you talk through that and what you meant, and maybe teach me about that?
Yes. So food has different vibrational or nutrient value. And living food has a higher energy level than non-living food. So that's first. The second part is, while you are eating, the emotional state that you are in while you're eating is the emotion you're feeding yourself. So if you're stressed and angry, or even just stressed, and you're standing at the kitchen sink and you're eating really fast because you got to get to the next thing, or you have to eat in the car to get to the next event or the next thing, and you're in that stress state, well, you're feeding yourself that stress. You're feeding yourself the frustration and the chaos and the drama. Versus if you make a meal and sit down at the table, even if it only takes you 5 minutes to eat it, but you're happy and you're at peace and you're in a resting state, your digestive system is going to operate even better. And even if you sit down for a meal, having it in a happier state is going to digest better and give you more of that nutrient value going into your body than if you were in an angry state sitting at the table trying to eat. So the emotions infuse everything that we do and affects our health.
Yeah, again, I'm thinking through that, and it's making so much sense when you explain it, because my mind is going back to literal step by step, and going back to, being in the stress state and all these things, and how it would impact the way you digest. And, I think you explained it in such a great way, because um a lot of times we hear people speak about these things, and I don't know if they're we start thinking through, oh, they're talking through hocus pocus or magical things, and that can apply. But then when you explain it in the way you're actually explaining it, it actually has a lot of validity and makes so much sense to how it impacts your entire body.
We are literally what we eat. and it's the emotions that we're eating. The things are, a lot of times people will have cravings for different things. If you have a craving for certain things like chocolate, there's something in the chocolate that your body needs. And there's things like manganese. So you might just need the manganese. So don't deprive yourself either, thinking, oh, it's a non living food. I'm not going to eat it. Go have a small bite of chocolate and be satisfied. Otherwise, you're going to keep yourself in a stressful state of by not eating it either. And that's what I mean by moderation, including moderation. Once you're satisfied, stop, save the rest.
Yeah, and so on your daily routine, how much of your day is out going out to nature and being in the outdoors?
Well, fortunately, I live in Montana. So all I have to do is walk out my door. And I do work outside. It's been a little warm recently, so I haven't been outside as much, but I have my back patio set up that I actually work on my back deck, being outside. And I leave my windows and doors open all the time. When I travel, I try and be outdoors as much as possible, because nature has such a huge healing effect on everything. It kind of depends on what I'm doing. Some days I'll be outside all day. Yesterday I was indoors all day because it was like 95 out there.
Well, I'm in Florida, and 95 is like morning. You're sweating when you walk outside in the morning, so it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
But the reason I ask that is because of the I know sun has a lot of vitamin D, being grounded in the soil. And we live this life where, well, at least I do, I walk from my house to my car covered. Then I walk into a building, spend, 8 to 10 hours in that building, then walk back to my house. And, you're limited outside and being grounded in nature. And so I don't know if you have any insights to how that could impact someone's stress levels because it feels so good to just have a picnic and sit outside and eat versus sometimes sitting at a table.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Vitamin D3 is so incredibly important. And if you have plenty of vitamin D in your body, if you do go outside and extend yourself longer hours, then you won't necessarily get a sunburn because your levels are optimal. And it's a hormone and it's a building block for all of the other things that our body needs. So if you're not getting D3 by being out in the sunlight or even in the moonlight, you'll still pick up light energy. Then definitely take a supplement and do that to have that because you're going to get optimal performance in the body. But it has a huge effect. And at any time, it's best just to go outside when you do take off the sunglasses, because it goes in through the eyes. And if you put on the sunglasses, you're going to be blind. It also goes in through the skin, but the eyes actually absorb a lot of it too. And even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes a day, that's better than none. So when you're walking to your car, take an extra step, stop, take 10 seconds, and then finish. And then the next day, do 20 seconds, and then do a minute. Or maybe get up early and not sweat before you go to work.
Yeah, there's no not sweating before work in Florida, so that's going to happen. But I do want to respect your time. We're coming up on the time. I feel like I could speak with you all day, but I do want to give you some time to start talking through maybe some projects you're working on. I'm going to link all of your how everyone can reach you, your company, in the description below. But I do want to give you some time to like focus on some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the book The Abundant Soul is out. You can get it wherever books are sold. And then, what we've created from that is an Abundant Soul Metaphysical and Business Conference. So it's a live event. The first one's going to be in Colorado Springs. It's coming up in September. And then we're going to be doing this every 4 to 6 months. So the second stop we have is going to be in Florida. And so in the live event, you're going to learn and get not just physical tips, business tips from people who have different entrepreneurial type businesses, but different things in the healing, spiritual, metaphysical, physics, science, personal development, and transformation world. And so that's one of the fun things that is going to be coming up and doing. I also host and do other live events and as a promoter. And so I will have another event. I just did a Law of Attraction retreat day, and Dr. Joe Vitale, who was featured on that famous movie, The Secret, and the Ho'oponopono prayer, was my guest speaker. And so we'll be doing another event with him coming up here in the fall in Southern California for that.
Wow, great. And so hopefully in the Florida one, I'm going to try to attend that. That sounds like it'll be great. And so I'll link all of that in the description below. So if you are interested, go in, support, go ahead and grab the book, The Abundant Soul. And I appreciate everyone for listening. And thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.